Welcome, and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listening-only mode until the question-and-answer session of today's conference. At that time, you may press star 1 on your phone to ask a question. I'd like to inform all parties today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Your conference will begin in a few minutes. Please stand by. Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in listening mode until the question and answer session of today's conference. At that time, you may press star 1 on your phone to ask a question. I'd like to inform all parties today's conference is being recorded. If you have objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the conference over to Josh Finch. Thank you. You may begin.
Good evening and welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Josh Finch with NASA's Office of Communications. We're here to discuss NASA's SpaceX Crew-4 mission, the fourth crew rotation flight of the SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft on a Falcon 9 rocket to the International Space Station. Teams from NASA, SpaceX, and more just completed the flight readiness review for the Crew-4 mission, including Crew-3's return, and some senior representatives here to talk more about this important review are Catherine Leaders, Associate Administrator of Space Operations Mission Directorate at NASA headquarters, Steve Stitch, Manager, NASA's Commercial Crew Program, Joel Montalbano, Manager, International Space Station Program at NASA's Johnson Space Center, Zeb Scoville, Flight Director, Flight Operations Directorate at Johnson, and Jared Metter, Director of Flight Reliability at SpaceX. We'll start with opening comments from our presenters, and then we'll take questions. To get into the queue, remember to press star 1. So before that, we'll go to Kathy for comments.
Well, this is a very, very, very exciting time. I kind of feel like we've been saying that for like the last 3 weeks now in different press briefings. But I think for those of you that probably have been supporting multiple press briefings today, I think that like kind of exemplifies how many things, what's going on, all the things that are going on here at KSC and across the agency. So even with all this going on, you know, this team carefully got together today and we stepped through another flight readiness review, this time for Crew-4 launch and our Crew-3 undocking and return of the Crew-3 crew. You know, the team did a great job going through all the work that's been done, and I would say it was a very, very clean review. You know, the team's been learning over each of these readiness reviews, working together. Really, I would say, you know, fine-tuning their verification closure processes, getting all the work together, how to work through reviews of the flights, the other flights that the SpaceX folks have been working through anomalies. And I definitely seen how we are trying to do all this as efficiently as possible, and it really showed up in the work that the team did. There were only a few open items, and I would say even though we took them as exceptions, I think there are more things that will get closed out and worked over the next 24, 36 hours because we probably took them more from just making sure we're clean and documenting any open work to get closed out, and Steve can talk about that a little bit more. Even though we do have a busy time ahead, you know, we are working to get Axiom 1 home this week, doing static fire, getting ready, static fire and dry dress, and getting ready for then Crew-4 launch and setting ourselves up for Crew-3 return. We all talked about, you know, how we're needing to stay vigilant, and we are doing this one step at a time. And so we will continue to work as a team, carefully stepping through all these activities that we know are critical for us to be able to safely launch our crews and return our crews back to their families. So really appreciate you being here today and hearing about all the hard work, and I really, really appreciated all the hard work that was evidenced in the packages we reviewed today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. This is Steve Stitch, the Commercial Crew Program Manager. I also thought we had a good review today. It was great to start off with the crew this morning, and the crew called in from crew quarters back in Houston, and you know, they wished us a good review. They know how important the job we have, and they thanked our team. And I would really like to thank our team for all the hard work that we've accomplished in getting ready for this flight over the last few months. Across all the different NASA centers, KSC, Marshall, JSC primarily, but we had a comprehensive program review on Tuesday of this week, and we polled all go to come to this review today. You know, this mission is a little unique. We've got a few new items on this flight. The first of those is it's a fourth flight booster for us, for Commercial Crew. This is the first time we've flown on a fourth flight booster. Our team did a lot of work to look at all the various components and make sure those were all ready to go. We will have a first-time reuse of the composite heat shield structure on the Dragon vehicle for this flight, and then in particular we're reusing 4 Draco thrusters on this flight. You know, it's a busy time for us, as Kathy said. We'll be watching the Axiom mission really closely. We have some ties between our Crew-4 mission and the Axiom flight. Their current plan is to undock next week on the 19th and then land on the 20th. And so what we've done is our team has been flight following that mission, and that vehicle's very clean right now. We'll continue to watch that mission, and then we'll have time to do a review in between that landing and the Crew-4 launch, and we'll preserve 48 hours in between the landing event and launch just to make sure the recovery team's ready for the launch and that we review all that data. We're going to take the time, as Kathy said, to take it one step at a time. Always the first step is to get through the FRR today, and then the next step will get Axiom safely landed based on the weather, and then we'll proceed next week into a static fire on the 20th, and we'll do a dry dress with the crew. The crew will get in the vehicle and check out Dragon and make sure their suits are working fine, the comm system's working fine, and all those sorts of things. We are pressing on toward the launch date, so right now the launch date is April 23rd at 5:26 a.m. Eastern Time, and we have backup opportunities on April 24th and 25th, so we've got a good setup for 3 in a row. I want to thank the NASA SpaceX team for just a great job at integrating, and we've been hand-in-hand working with Joel on the Axiom flight as well, and we have confidence in the team. We've got a few things to close out, but as you said, Kathy, they're relatively minor, and this review is a little early. We deconflicted this FRR today with the Axiom operation, so it's probably a little earlier than we would have had it, and I just want to thank the whole team. We'll turn it over to Joel.
Hey, thank you, Steve, and thank you everyone for tuning in today. You know, both Steve and Kathy mentioned how busy it is on board ISS, and I'll just echo that. And I'll say that, you know, today's 7-hour review doesn't do justice of all the work that's been done with the space station program, the Commercial Crew program, SpaceX, and the international partners, everyone on board to make this a success. You know, onboard space station, just a little over 2 weeks ago, we returned the Soyuz crew, Anton, Pyotr, and Mark Vande Hei, with Pyotr and Mark spending 355 days in space, and all the crew members are doing great. You've seen a number of press interviews with Mark, and again, those guys are just doing fantastic. With this mission, we're planning a 5-day handover between Crew-3 and Crew-4. And so while we'll work the specific landing date and pending, you know, a good launch and then good weather for landing, but we are planning a 5-day handover between the 2 crew members. It's always exciting to have a new crew come on board the International Space Station. Samantha and Chell will be returning to Space Station, so they'll see what's changed since they last flew, and then to see the smiles on the face of new flyers with Jessica and Bob Hines. So it's just exciting to have crew members new crew members come on board, as well as returning crew members. This expedition will bring about 275 experiments during their increment to the International Space Station. And so these are experiments and activities that help us with low Earth orbit commercialization, with technology development for exploration, and these things are benefits. In addition to that, you do the benefits to humanity that we do on board the International Space Station. But there's no stopping after the Crew-4 and Crew-3. We'll be looking forward to the OFT-2 mission in mid-May. Right now we're looking at May 9th, no earlier than May 19th. And then the hits go on with SpaceX 25 in early June. So thank you very much. And with that, I'll hand it over to Zeb.
Okay, good afternoon. This is Zeb Scoville. I'm the Chief Flight Director. And the way I look at this day in space flight is really an apex and not a not an apex, but a threshold. We are not at the summit, but we are crossing over into an age of human exploration in which we have 11 crew on the space station now. We've got 4 that are ready to go, and we have an interplanetary class rocket on the pad preparing to go to the moon. With this, NASA is achieving some goals that we have set out for decadal surveys and decadal missions to improve the benefits for humankind. The crew is doing great, both on board. They're powering through the science and the activities combined with the Axiom crew. We've got Bob and Jessica and Jill and Samantha in quarantine at Johnson Space Center preparing for their trip to Florida and then eventually to the ISS, and they're raring to go. So with that, the flight control team is trained. We're ready to welcome on board and see a great mission ahead of us.
Okay, this is Jared Metter from SpaceX. I want to say it's an honor to be here today, having just completed the flight readiness review in advance of the Crew-4 mission. As Kathy and others have mentioned, it really is a very exciting and busy time. We're now working towards the launch of Crew-4. Crew-4 will be our 7th human spaceflight mission and 6th mission to the ISS. Just last Friday, we had launched the Axiom-1 mission, which was our first private astronaut mission to station. We plan to bring home the Axiom-1 crew early next week, and then the Crew-3 astronauts shortly after the Crew-4 launch. Today's FRR was an important milestone in the flight readiness process. We conducted a thorough review and discussed many topics. SpaceX's role is to safely deliver and then return the crew from the ISS. We've done everything possible to make sure that Falcon, Dragon, and the SpaceX team are all ready to support this mission. The crew's trained, the ground teams and the hardware are ready, and only nominal open tasks remain. So as of this evening, we still have some open work, including final checkouts and the all-day rehearsal that Steve mentioned, including launch day activities with the crew, followed by the integrated static fire. But right now, everything looks good, and we have a clear path forward to that April 23rd launch opportunity. Human spaceflight is a humbling endeavor and one that's not tolerant to errors. We take seriously the incredible responsibility we all share in ensuring that this mission is successful. So we will continue to closely look at all aspects of the mission and listen to the hardware so that we can continuously improve and ensure that we fly safely and reliably. So the purpose of the reviews like today is to give the whole team a chance to step back and think critically and make sure we're ready to fly this crew, and I think we achieved that goal today. Again, we're all very excited to be here today, and I want to thank all the teams that have gotten us to this point, and we'll continue doing hard work until the mission is complete successfully.
Thank you, Jared. And we'll now turn it over to the media question and answer portion. And our first question will be from Bill Harwood at CBS News.
Hey, thanks, guys. Bill Harwood at the Kennedy Space Center. Is there any linkage between the wet dress 4, if they do it next week, and the Crew-4 launch? In other words, if they go for a T0 the 21st, which is a possibility, is that a one-shot for them before you guys, or could they get another day before they would impact you? In other words, just I don't have any idea what the linkage is. If you could explain that, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
So I think, and Jared, you can correct me, but I think it's about, like, they need about 48 hours to get their commodities built up for the wet dress, and then between wet dress and us, or a Falcon launch, it's about, 24 hours? So we just have to, what's been great, I think, is the SpaceX launch team and Charlie have really been in day-to-day communication, working through together to make sure that we're both accomplishing our goals as much as possible. So, but Jared, correct me if I got those splits wrong.
Yeah, that sounds about right. There are certainly some shared commodities on the range that all users share, like helium and nitrogen. So working through those, but the 24-hour time between the missions gives us plenty of time to store up our reserves and be ready for a launch opportunity.
And our next question is from Jeff Faust at Space News.
Hey, good afternoon. Will NASA be tracking the recovery or splashdown of the AX-1 spacecraft using the same assets it would use for a crew rotation mission like aircraft and such? And then also, if the splashdown gets delayed a day or more, does that mean a day-for-day slip in the Crew-4 launch? Thanks.
This is Joel. Yes, we're using the WB airplane like we always have for these missions. And right now there is a requirement of 2 days, approximately 48 hours between landing and launch.
And then from a commercial crew perspective, we fleet follow all the Dragon flights, whether it be a cargo flight or an Inspiration 4 or Axiom. So we, hand in hand with SpaceX, understand how the vehicle's performing so we can look ahead toward our flight, including performance during entry. And so we'll follow that flight all the way down to splashdown. So.
As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please press star 1 on your phone. And our next question will be from Eric Berger with Ars Technica.
Hi, thanks for doing this. Appreciate it. I think this is a question for Kathy. Within the last week or so, Thomas Zurbuchen, on Twitter said he now preferred used boosters over totally new ones for most science applications. You're flying this flight, obviously, on the fourth use of a first stage, and I'm just wondering, does that sentiment hold for human spaceflight as well now? Or are you just as happy to fly on a previously flown rocket as a new one? Do you prefer it, or what? Thanks.
What I prefer to fly on is a rocket that's met our requirements. And so we've had new ones that meet our requirements, and we have ones that have, right now, what are we up to? This is our 4th. So, really, and so we're working, every rocket that we fly on has to meet our requirements. And so I think we've got a team of folks that have defined what they are, and it's very clear what those requirements are, and so I don't care as long as it meets our requirements. Thanks.
And our next question is from Joey Roulette at Reuters.
For one question for Steve, what are each of the open items that you guys have yet to close out? And then one for Jared, real quick. Can you talk a little bit about the heat shield on this Dragon? What changes have been made, what's new, and what challenges has SpaceX run into in the past with it? Thanks.
Yeah, I can talk about the open items that we took coming out of the FR. The first one was really to complete a little bit of work on the thermal protection system on Dragon. Had a couple areas that just needed to be closed out, and so we'll get that work done and make sure that that's ready to go. We also kind of do fleet following on all the F9 flights, and we have a feed line bellows that we want to look at a little bit more closely that was found on the vehicle for the upcoming Starlink flight, and we want to make sure that we're clear of that particular issue for our flight. And then the final thing was there's been a lot of activity here at the Kennedy Space Center, use of the system that provides gaseous nitrogen to the vehicle to purge, and we want to make sure we have complete redundancy on that system as we get into the launch countdown and get into the static fire this week. So those were probably the 3 big items that we looked at, and I'll let Jared talk about the heat shield.
Yeah, we're excited on this upcoming mission that we'll be reflying heat shield components for that primary structure. I think it's a really good process and a really good teamwork effort that we have between SpaceX and NASA to assess every component that we bring forward, to look at what it is certified to perform, what environments it sees in flight, and ensure that we're all really comfortable that those components are capable of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus more flights. So it's a great step forward that we're able to reuse this heat shield on this mission. It's a sign of the continued progress that the teams are making together, and we'll continue that effort as we go forward.
And our next question is from David Curley with the Discovery Channel.
Thanks very much for doing this. Zeb, we've heard from Kathy and Steve and Joel about the quickening pace from the flight director's point of view, is this exciting, or is it a little bit more tense, juggling more balls during this period?
It's absolutely exciting. Flying in space is our job, and it's what we want to do. And this is certainly a busy time and a pace. But if we see issues or we have problems, we're ready to call them out and make sure that we're doing the right thing and slow down and if necessary. But at this time, this is achieving the goals of the agency and the purpose of the ISS program. And so being able to accomplish that mission is both an honor and something that I look forward to. The science that we're completing on board with the crews, the dynamic operations with docking and undocking, this is our purpose. This is what motivates us in our jobs, and this is what we train for in the simulations. This is where we have practice things going right and things going wrong, and we're prepared for them.
And our next question is from Ken Kramer at Space Up Close.
Oh, hi. Thank you for doing this, and good luck. I would like to go back to the heat shield, please. Can you talk a little bit more in detail about the significance of reusing this heat shield? How did you qualify it? And what gives you the confidence? I know this is a wonderful thing, but I want to know why you think you can do this. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Steve Stitz, the Commercial Crew Program Manager. So the heat shield, and just when you step back, when we talk about reusing the heat shield, it's not the thermal protection system tiles on that heat shield. It is the composite structure. And so the qualifications program that SpaceX goes through is they look at all the different loads that heat shield could see through the flight, whether it be on orbit, as the vehicle has a little bit of exposed to the sun and gets some thermal deflection, all the way through entry, the aero loading on the heat shield, and then the splashdown event. So it's qualified for that whole environment. Then what SpaceX does with the heat shield is they actually, when they build it up and assemble it, they take it out and they apply flight loads with a mechanical device that applies flight loads to that heat shield. What we did for reuse, and we've only agreed to reuse it for one flight, is we looked at a couple things. One, since it's exposed to the saltwater environment, what did that environment do to the heat shield? Is it acceptable to go use that heat shield given that it was in saltwater for some period of time? SpaceX goes and dries it out. We followed that process. We took x-rays of it to ensure that there was no water in the heat shield structure. And then SpaceX also goes and does a test on that heat shield again for the second flight, and they apply the loads that heat shield is going to see the second flight, and that gives us the confidence. And we review all that data on the NASA side, and that gave us the confidence to approve that heat shield reuse for this flight.
This is Jared from SpaceX. I'll add another benefit of having kind of multiple programs is that we've actually already reflown this heat shield component on our CRS, on our cargo resupply missions. So we also have flight experience with reflying these components and the ability to then land and inspect that heat shield. And that also builds a lot of confidence in addition to the formal qualification that Steve explained.
And our next question is from Marcia Smith at Space Policy Online.
Thanks so much. My question is for Jared about the Axiom crew. At what point does SpaceX's responsibility end? I mean, once you get them back to shore, do you take them someplace for post-flight checkups, or do they just go home, or what happens to the crew? And is there any data sharing with NASA about the effects of spaceflight on these private astronauts?
Yeah, we're very excited for the completion of the Axiom 1 mission. It was a really important step to get through the launch and get them up to station where they can go do all the science that they're going to do. We're hyper-focused on getting them down and getting them down safely and recovering them and getting them back to shore. And that's the primary focus that we have right now.
Our next question is from Marcia Dunn at the Associated Press.
Yes, hi. For Jared or Joel, could you talk a little bit about the video routing problem that prevented the Axiom crew from docking on time a few days ago? I know that they had about 2 hours to sort it out. Could they have come back the next day to give it another shot, or how long can a Dragon just, tag along working out a problem like this? Thanks.
Okay, this is Joel. I'll start, and then Jared can add anything he wants. So we have a flight rule for these missions that for the private astronaut missions as well as the cargo missions that we have to have a video of the approach, and we did not have that video. We had a misconfiguration in the control center, and as a result, we were not getting that video on board space station. At the time, the vehicle was stable, and after discussions between the control center in Houston and Hawthorne, it was decided that with a stable vehicle and a vehicle that was fully functional, there was no need to rush, and so the team took time, a little over 50 minutes, while the vehicle station kept and waited for docking. As we do these different missions, the private astronaut missions, the crew missions, the cargo missions, we all learn every time we fly. And so one thing we are going to look at is if you have a vehicle like we did for the Axiom mission that was fully functional, what is the benefit? You have to look at the benefit of station keeping versus bringing the vehicle in without that video. And so in the end, we did not get that video routed to the space station due to the configuration issue we had, and we went ahead and gave a go for approach. I think in the future we're going to look at that, and we'll probably shorten that time. As far as station keeping, what you look at is it depends on how the mission's going. This mission, the Axiom mission, went really well, so they had a lot of margin. So they could have station kept there for probably another hour without any major issue. However, you do want to get, with a vehicle that close, you want to get that vehicle docked, especially if everything's working well. But the teams are going to go ahead and look at the flight rules, look at what we did on this mission, and see if there's anything we should do different in the future.
Yeah, not much to add to that. I think when we design these approaches to station, there are built-in waypoints, and the intent is exactly to handle contingencies just like this. I think the team performed really well to adapt and understand the issue and then resolve it and successfully dock to station.
As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please press star 1 on your phone to enter the queue. And our next question is from Irene Klotz at Aviation Week.
Thanks, Josh. Good afternoon. I may have missed this, and this is probably for Kathy, but if I realize they're all moving targets with these dates, but if by chance SLS is ready to pick up a wet dress on the 23rd, and there's no delay in the Axiom return, and I'm sorry, the 21st, and Crew-4 is ready to go on 23rd, which takes precedence? Would SLS stand down and let Crew-4 proceed with the pre-launch operations and launch on the 23rd, or would the tanking test proceed ahead? And then a quick question for Jared. Is there any changes in this Crew Dragon? Any changes in the manufacturing or in the outfitting in this newest capsule? Thanks.
So let me just start off. I'll do the first question. Irene, Jim Free and I, early on in this flow, agreed that us getting our crews up to the ISS is really the most important mission out there, even though obviously that Artemis wet dress is a big deal. But we have there's a difference between a test and needing to get crew on orbit to maintain the on-orbit vehicle and get the Crew-3 vehicle down. And so we're both watching all these missions. It's kind of a lot of fun, but it's also takes a lot of coordination and just making sure that we're trying to keep the margin to make sure that we can get our crew rotation vehicle going. But we're also, anybody that's been this, and Irene, you've been watching missions for a long time, it's better to keep trying because there's a lot of things that can take out launches like weather and a few other things. And so one of the things that we agreed to up front was, we just need to keep both of us making progress on our mission campaigns and things will get worked out as you get the best data in front of you at that time about readiness of the vehicles and the weather and everything else. So, right now we're not working a conflict, but we absolutely agree that we've got to get Crew to the ISS.
Jared here regarding the changes to the Dragon spacecraft. After every mission, we're looking to learn from what the hardware has to tell us and then consider changes and make changes. There are a few changes on this Dragon. They're quite subtle. One of the more fun ones is we've added USB charging ports for the crew. Realize that they'll have an opportunity to charge up their tablets while they're in free flight. There are also changes to the trunk fins. We've changed those to make them more robust. Whenever we do any of these changes, we work closely with NASA to make sure that both parties fully understand the change and that NASA certifies the changes and okays flying them. So we stay in lockstep, but we are always making small changes to improve the reliability, robustness, or just the experience for the astronauts in general.
And our next question is from Jim Siegel at Spaceflight Insider.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking my question, and good luck to all of you on this mission. I had a question for, I believe it was Joel, who mentioned something about 275 experiments, and I wasn't sure whether that was experiments that have been completed by Crew-3 or were going to be handed off to Crew-4 or what. And what might be one or two of the most important of those experiments that have been completed? Thank you.
Okay, the 275 I mentioned is for the Expedition 4 crew, or the Crew-4 guys. And so, and that's a combination of experiments not only from NASA, but from all our international partners, our Europeans, our Japanese colleagues, our Canadian colleagues, and our Russian colleagues. One of the, probably to me, the most exciting one is there's an experiment we talked about today at the Readiness Review about some work that's being done on orbit to help restore vision for people who have lost their sight here on Earth. And it's an experiment that this will be the third generation of this experiment, where you do some work on orbit and bring these tissues back, and the goal or the idea is that you can take these tissues and implant them in the people who have sight visions here on Earth, sight vision issues, and such that you could either partially restore or fully restore sight. So to me, it's another example of how we're using the International Space Station to benefit humanity across the globe.
And our next question is from Bill Harwood at CBS News.
Yeah, hey, thanks, guys. I know you need to get Crew-4 up to ISS, and I know the direct handover is important, but how critical is, or how time critical is getting Crew-3 down? I mean, is there a specific date that's a bingo per se, or could you hold them up an extra day if it would shorten the transit time back to Earth, for example?
Yeah, I'll take that, Bill. This is Steve Stitch. Right now our plan is to try to return Crew-3 by we have a beta cutout coming up where it's not the optimal time to undock, and so that would be trying to return by 5:10. The vehicle itself is in great health, and as a matter of fact, today we're doing that standard inspection of the thermal protection system for MMOD, so it's in great health. It could actually, in terms of lifetime, it could stay quite a bit longer, all the way through about mid-June or so from a 210-day certified capability. So we want to try to get it accomplished by this beta cutout. And so, when you look at the Crew-4 launch and we want about a 5-day handover, so with the crew, we're using that as kind of our metric of getting Crew-3 home by that beta cutout. So.
Our next question is from Gina Sinceri at ABC News.
Yes, I would like to follow up on Marcia Dunn's question. Since Axiom is, they're doing science and experiments and testing, what kind of medical testing do you do on them when they come back? I didn't quite understand the answer.
we'll do some standard blood draws and urine draws on them and collect the data. We'll work with the Axiom team. This is a long-term partnership that we're going to have with on private astronaut missions with SpaceX and for now Axiom and hopefully in the future other providers. But what we do is, and we share on orbit the time with the crew members. So we have some of the Crew-3 guys working with the Axiom team on some of the experiments that we do with CASIS. And so we work together with them. They're complementary, and together we'll share that science when they come down.
And our final question is from Marcia Dunn at the Associated Press.
Yes, two quick questions. Joel, you said that was a misconfiguration in the control center for the video for the docking. Was that Houston or Hawthorne? And for Jared, why is there so much time between the undocking of the Axiom crew and the actual splashdown? Usually it happens much sooner, and this time it's almost 24 hours difference. Thanks.
This is Joel. The misconfiguration was on the Houston side.
And this is Jared. In terms of the undock to splashdown, the orbital mechanics of when we leave sort of dictate how long it takes to phase to the right spot. We have, of course, designated splashdown areas, a number of different sites, but the Dragon has to make its way to that point to splash down, so it does take some time to adjust and do burns to bring it back down.
And we'll go to Kathy for some closing comments.
So thanks again for participating and being here today and your interest in our progress as we're once again stepping into this final readiness for the Crew-4 launch and then returning our Crew-3 crews. I really, really appreciate all the work from the NASA and the SpaceX team for us to get to this point. And like I said before, we're going to be carefully stepping through all the many other steps that it will take for us to be able to launch our next expedition crew members and bring the Crew-3 ones home. We take this job very seriously, and it was clearly in evidence today at today's review. So thanks again.
And that's going to wrap things up for us here. Our next event for this mission will be on Monday, April 18th, when the Crew-4 astronauts arrive to Kennedy Space Center. You can watch this event live on the NASA TV media channel starting at about 12:30. For NASA SpaceX Crew-4 mission, they're targeting launch at 5:26 a.m. Saturday, April 23rd from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. We'll have live launch coverage beginning at 1:45 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on the day of launch, and we'll continue to broadcast through docking, hatch opening, and the welcome ceremony on Sunday, April 24th. Thank you all for joining us, and have a good evening.
That concludes today's conference. Thank you for participating. You may disconnect at this time.